I hope you have given him all the praise he deserved. And every day as we get up, remember, life is not a right, it's a privilege. So every day that you get up, you give God thanks for the breath of life. Give him thanks, ask him to forgive you for whatever you may have done wrong, and ask him to grant you the wisdom not to repeat it. God is good all the time. As a matter of fact, God is the best. God is always there for you. He's always there for all of us. This program is brought. Mr. Brown, you have to press the button there in front of you. Yep. And green light came on.
Yes,
you
sir.
Are on.
All
Good
right.
afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, let's talk a little bit about who is Wilfred Brown.
It's a lot of things to say about women.
But only tell me the good things.
Well, I'm from Jamaica. Let me start there. I grew up in I left there early in my teens, and grew up in Toronto, Canada,
Okay.
and then migrated from Canada back in '91 to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where all my family lives, and I still have a very strong connection there, and I go back and forth frequently to that. Look there, so I consider their home.
Okay.
That's
Fort
in a
Lauderdale.
nutshell. Yeah, Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. And now you live in St. Martin.
Yes, I'm married to the island in more ways than one.
Okay. Once you're married, your foot is locked down, you know. So this is home.
Well, I've been in this marriage for 16 going on 17 years, so I'm not new to it. That's how long my wife and I have been together.
You ain't moving from here.
No. I knew from the day I met her that I was going to be here one way or the other. So I had to make sure I reserve that in my mind. If I'm going to date this lady, eventually somewhere along the line, I am going to end up in St. Martin.
Okay, right. So you didn't meet her here on St. Martin?
No. I met her in Fort Lauderdale, actually.
Oh,
She herself was in university there, and we went to the same church, and we eventually met there. And we were living in the U.S. for a while before she came back home. That was her biggest desire, to finish her studies, get herself together, and then move back home to her country and contribute here. And
then
she's
you
doing
said,
that.
I'm coming with you.
I got no choice. You got to follow the wife.
Yeah. Follow the wife or there's no life.
Exactly, that too.
Okay. Now, you have published a book. Let me ask you, you like literature?
I have always loved literature from a very young age. I got into reading when I was in high school. I have a literature teacher. And, sometimes you'll get some teachers in your life that you'll never forget their name. And this lady was one of those. Not because she was a nice lady. She was not. But the way she approached you, she wouldn't put up with your nonsense. She says, you're going to do it this way, or you're not going to do it at all. This is how I'm going to set it up. And one thing she said to me when I was young, she said, if you want to learn to speak and be eloquent, you have to learn to read and read lots of books.
Yep.
So she had a theory that once a week you had to go to the library and pick a book, read it, and then come to her literature class and explain to the class what you read. So I fell in love with reading, writing from a very young age. I wrote a lot of songs when I was very young because I was into music. I had an attraction to music. And then I moved from Jamaica to Toronto and got into college there and just dropped it. Because my focus was my studies, and I'm at a different age of my life. I'm in my late teens, early 20s. I'm in a new city, and I'm want to learn it, and I'm being introduced to all different type of cultures and integrating the system. Because Toronto, if you've ever been there, is a multicultural city.
Yep.
And so that sort of captivated me for a number of years before I moved and started looking at it again.
Now, I'm reading the back of your book here, and the first sentence I read, Wilfred A. Brown is a husband of Inga H. Brown and a father of 3 beautiful children. Okay, so there's just a little synopsis about you, but it says here you're also the president and founder of United for Purpose. Tell me a little bit about this United for Purpose.
It's a Florida organization we started a while back, a not-for-profit organization, and it's about empowerment. I have an affinity for young men. For one who never grew up with his father, I tend to find myself in all my life, mentoring and training and talking to young men. Even the ministry I was a part of in Fort Lauderdale was considered a mega church. I was a director for the men's ministry, so I had 2,000 men underneath me.
Wow.
And so I believe in empowerment. I come from a system where, you had to figure out how to make it work. And that was self-taught in its own way.
Okay, and you're an ordained minister. You said
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good. Well, I know a little bit about you, and that's good. Now, you have a book. A Great Fight is a product of great faith. Okay. Is this your first published book?
Yes, it is.
Your
My
first.
first that book was written 7 years ago. And if you're a writer, you realize that when you write a book, the first edition is never the final edition.
Yeah.
You have to rewrite. It's gone to a lot. When I first wrote the book, it wasn't even called A Great Fight. It's a product of great faith. It was called The Giant Within. And it mirrored the title mirrored a book of an author that I really admire, Tony Robbins. But it was about my journey. It's about how you come out of a life of negativity and found a way to make it work for you without ever being given an instruction manual as to how to. And when I wrote the book, I gave it to a friend of mine to read. And after about 4 chapters, she called me back. Now, this friend is very unique because she's actually a friend of my mom's who grew up with me. She knew me very well and my entire family. So when she read it, she says, "Are you sure you want to publish this?" Because a lot of personal thing was divulged that nobody knew. A lot of people did not, because
Personal things about you.
exactly, and my journey and the things that I experienced, the negativity I had to encounter, and on my growing up with my family, and sometimes you come out of a family that it is not the most positive place to be, because they'll vote you the least likely to do anything. That's one of the things I was voted as. And so in that thing, she said, "You sure you don't want to talk to everybody about this?" I said, "No, I'm not going to." I thought about it. I'm going to be honest with you. And I said, some of the characters in the book has already passed away. And there are a few of them that are still alive. And I'm not even sure they'll remember the incident. But the incident that happened had that much impact on me that it carved my way of handling things until up to that point. And then I start realizing that it wasn't about them. It was about me forgiving them.
Okay.
Because you start realizing that there are things that your parents might have done that you might have disagree with, but it's not that they knew better. They are giving you what they were taught themselves, and they might have not taken the time to analyze it to realize that that's not a good way to grow a child, or that's not a good way to, parlay to a child how to deal with issues and how to deal with different things. And as I said, I didn't know my father until I was like 28. So I had my grandfather around, my uncle around, and different men around, even my stepfather, that in one way, some of them had positive influences and some of them had very negative influences on me. And I've had to learn to trust myself and learn to be confident about who I am and believe that one day on this journey of life, I will have the ability to make the changes I need to make to become the man I hope to become. And that book expressed that.
Okay, so although it's not an autobiography,
No, it's not.
Yeah, definitely, but it's about you. So
Yeah.
when anybody reads this, now when people read books, sometimes what you are writing about yourself might also apply to them.
I gave a story at a book signing recently I had in the U.S. and I gave a story to a man about my name. I was guessing with my test. I said I hated my name when I was a kid.
You hated Wilfred?
I hated Wilfred Brown because there was an old man in my community. His name was Wilfred also, and as kids we used to tease him. Now I grew up in the countryside where they used to use the word like Massa and Busha, and that's all slave titles.
Yeah.
This man had that title, Mas Wilfred. So he used to own one of the only stores in the community. But we used to tease him as kids. But funny enough, nobody in my group knew that was my name. Because as you know, in the Caribbean, people don't call you by your real name.
Yeah.
They call you by your nickname.
nickname.
I grew up with kids that up till this day, I still don't know their real name.
Yeah.
But if you give me their nickname, I'll tell you exactly who it
it
is
is.
and who
Yeah.
he belongs to or where he's from.
Yeah, that's why. Even here, you see that somebody pass away, you'll see their real name, and then better known as.
And I've seen people give me somebody's name, and I looked at it and didn't know who it was until the person walked into the room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I know who this is." Revelation come to you, and you're like, "Okay, that's understandable."
Now, when you wrote this book, now when you're writing a book, you're thinking in your mind, who will read this book? What kind of person? Who am I appealing to?
All right.
Did that thought go through your mind?
Yes, and that's why this book is strategy. It's strategically written the way it's written.
Mm.
It's not just about my journey. I picked 12 topics that not just me, but a lot of the men around me were experiencing.
Mm.
They were experiencing lack in money, in success, in marriages. And so I picked all those topics and I addressed them one by one and I interject my own personal experience dealing with. And I'll give you a good one. When I was a kid and I moved to Toronto as a teenager, and in the era in the 80s when I got in the 70s and 80s when I got to Toronto, the biggest thing was about self-improvement. Find yourself a mentor. Get somebody who can pour into your life and help you to become the man you want to be.
Yeah.
Now I couldn't find anybody because I didn't know anybody. There was nobody in my family at the caliber that could have done that for me. And we're based on where I wanted to go. So with that being said, what I did, I start reading books. I revert back to the very thing that my literature teacher got me into when I was in high school in Jamaica. I picked the autobiography of some of the most influential people that I knew at the time and start to read about their journey. And that's what allowed me to get nuggets and information and strategies on how to start working on me.
You. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you don't have somebody to pour in, if you still have a desire to become somebody, there are mountains of biography out there you can choose to read that will help you to do that. You know, you just have to pick the destination you're going to, and the book will help you get there. That's basically it.
Okay. So, is it appealing to women also? The book?
Everyone. It's
Everyone.
not. It's like because of the topic and the nature of the topic, and the title, I should say. It's not a faith-based book, although my faith is an integral part of
Yeah.
my life, and I cannot shy from that and will not shy from that. It's a foundation that I stand on. Anybody of any faith and nationality can read it because there's strategies in there, there are nuggets in there that you can use to empower yourself to help you overcome whatever hurdles you're dealing, whatever obstacles is facing you. There's a quote in the book that talks about you don't pick the giants you fight or when they show up, but when they show up, there's a strategy to help you get past that.
And I've seen a lot of, browsing through, I've seen advice and so on that
Yeah.
applies to everybody.
Exactly.
Like, you old and young, because the problems may be different, but there are problems.
Right.
All through life. When you're a child in school, when you grow up and you have a family, then, the problems are different. But we always have hurdles to get over.
We have stages in life we all go through.
Yeah. And I don't say problems, I would say challenges.
Yeah.
And
It's the problem is only an issue that you don't have an answer for. Whenever you have an answer for it, it doesn't become a problem
it's
anymore.
no more longer a problem.
Exactly. When you have a solution for whatever the question is you're dealing, situation you're dealing with, it's not a problem
It's
anymore.
no longer a problem.
It's now become an implementation situation. How do I implement the things I need to implement so I can get past this what's in front of me? And that's basically what it comes down to. Yeah.
Well, no, but very interesting. Now, beautiful book too, I've got to say.
Thank you very
Those
much.
that are listening, you'll hear. It's a very beautiful book, nice cover.
That cover was designed by a local.
By a local here.
A friend of mine drew the knight for me. I was doing a teaching on the armor of God. So he drew the knight for me. And when I decided to do this book, I said, I'm going to do it. So I gave it to a local graphic artist, a gentleman here, and he came up with the idea, what you see there in front of you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is good. Now, I had to fight to keep it because my publisher wanted to change it.
Mhm.
And my wife and I said, no, we're not. You can highlight it, but it's important that we keep the essence of what we're trying to portray here on the cover, because it shows a knight with a sword. That there comes a point in your journey of life that you have to get up off your knees and decide you're going to fight. What are the weapons are you going to fight your warfare with?
Yep. And you have to make that decision,
Those are decisions you have to make.
And it's like I tell people, there are certain decisions in life nobody can make for you. You have to do it yourself. Now, like I was saying, the book, is it available to the general public?
It's available. It's available. You can get it online on Amazon. It's all over the place on the internet. But It will be fully available as of November 13th here in St. Martin. We're working on getting it into the bookstores here already. You can come and pick your copy up at the actual signing. We're inviting everyone to
Okay,
come.
let's talk about that. Where
Yeah.
and when is that?
John Larmony Center. November 13th starts at 6:30.
Okay,
It's
November
a free
13th.
event. You can come on down, wear your mask. Go making sure everybody's masked and sanitized. So we got to keep everybody healthy. And come and enjoy the evening. It
Okay.
will be a book sign. We'll be signing autographs
So
to all the books.
we'll have a book signing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the 13th of November. That's 2 days after St. Martin Day. And it starts at 6:30 in the evening.
Yes.
6:30 in the evening. Okay, good. So St. Martin, you have a date. You have an appointment with now, what's your title? Because I see here minister, you're ordained minister. So
I don't.
should I refer to you as minister?
No. I don't. I'm not big on titles. And it's relevant when when the environment requires it. That's fine. But I'm just Wilfred Brown. As simple as that. I wear many hats and do a lot of things. And
So you don't have no problem, no more with Wilfred.
no. Funny. I got over that by implementing a simple strategy. When I was about 21, I was living in Toronto, as I mentioned. I went to the courthouse trying to figure out what it's going to take me to change my name. And they gave me this long list of documents because I wasn't born in Canada that I had to provide them to so I could get my name changed. Because I simply was going to do a simple switch, just make my first name my middle name, my middle name my first name, as simple as that. And they give me a cost for it, and I'm like, whoa, I don't got no that money. I'm in school. I'm doing a full-time job and doing full-time school. I don't have money to pay for this. So I decided that because of lack of finance, I'm not going to change the name. So my decision was, something, I'm not going to focus on my name. I'm going to do a unique thing. My grandfather always says to me, you must become a man of your word. And that's a character I started working on. And I never paid attention to it. And I just kept going, doing when I got out of school, got into corporate America, build my companies, do the things I did until I got about 35 when a friend of mine brought a client into my office one day and he made a comment to her. He says, if Mr. Brown tells you he can do it, you can take it to the bank. And it reminded me right there of the commitment I made that I've now become the exact thing, that the name now is synonymous with that title, a man of his word. So why change it after you spent all the years building it?
You built it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's time to enjoy it.
Exactly.
But in life, people may have something on them. There was a lady who told me she doesn't like to laugh because she doesn't like to hear herself laugh. And I said, oh, that's a first. It's the first time I've heard that. Some people don't like their voice. They don't like to sing. I thought I had a horrible voice at one time, and an uncle of mine told me, make your voice work for you. And I got over that. Some people don't like their name, some people don't like how they look, but at some point you have to deal with it because it's not going to change.
I tell you, when I was young, I used to sing a lot in church. And then puberty kicked in, and my voice changed, and I hated my voice. And I said, something, I don't think singing is going to become the career path that's going to take me to where I need to go to. I remember in college, we had a band, and we did one song that was a hit in all the clubs in Toronto back in the 82, 83. But still wasn't sold on the fact that I had a voice. And that's something I told it. A lot of times we are our own worst enemy. We tell ourselves the things that cripple us and hold us back. I remember the first time my song was played at a friend of mine's wedding, and everybody got up and danced. They had so much fun. I was under the table because the DJ surprised us and did that. And when I raised up, I realized how much they loved it, and they loved this. Till they were asking, "Who's that guy? I love the sound of his voice." Do not know it was me. So yeah, everybody has something about themselves that they want to change, and we think we can make it perfect based on what society tells us perfection should look like, or what perfection should sound like, or if they should be dark or light or tall or fat. We have to start self-loving.
Well, I don't want us to be our own enemy, but you can be your greatest critic, your own critic. You critique yourself. Whatever you're doing, and if you're going to do it again, like if you have this book, this is a great book. If you're going to write another one, you have to critique yourself and say, the next one has to be better. you know. And that's how I looked at life. Whatever I'm going to do, there must be some improvement.
Right.
You can't, instead of progressing, digress.
Mm.
So, but what I was going to ask you is, and we slipped a little bit from it, and of course you'll be signing books. At
Yes, I will be.
The book signing,
Yes,
of course.
yes.
That's where it will become official and people can get a copy of it.
Yes, they can get a copy right there.
Okay, good. And of course, signed by the author.
Yeah.
That means a lot to people, when the author-
You know, I never realized how much I would till I did a book signing in Florida recently, and a lot of people came and they were like they buy 4 or 5 books and it's like they're not leaving until they get my signature. I'm like, okay, and I start looking at it. Even my family, my brother's like, you better sign this. My
Yeah.
mother-in-law, you better sign this, and that's how you
It
start
means a lot
realizing.
to people.
Yeah, I have a young lady the other day. Took a slip of paper and said, "Sign your name here." She said, "I'm gonna keep this in my bag. When you get famous, I can tell them I had your signature." I'm like, okay. So that's to tell you how important some things can
Yeah, so you can tell her now,
be. Yeah.
So November 13th at the John Lamini Center on Longwall Road in Great Bay. And it's at 6:30 in the evening. It's free, the entrance is free. But we're going to have the launching of the book there and, of course, book signing. And so you'll be doing any reading?
Yes, I'll be doing a little reading from it, yes.
From it, yeah. I think the book, if you have to rate it, I don't mean whether PG or anything like that, but if you're going to rate it inspirational, advice, motivational, or how would you rate this book?
I'll call it empowerment, and I'll tell you
Empowerment.
why I use empowerment, because the way the book is written, it is written to help you do something for yourself, to improve you. It's a book that gives you a different viewpoint of a subject that you never thought of before, or a different way of looking at it. It's like you and I sitting now looking at it from this direction, but if I switch it around and put you on this side of the table, and it's a different viewpoint at this
Yeah.
point. So it's not about telling you right and wrong. I'm giving you a different opinion. You might consider looking at it because you might be looking at one way and you don't see the hurdles or the stumbling block or the things that could make it work for you. But if I show you a different way of looking at it, then guess what? Oh, I never thought of that. That will work. Yes, and it makes it easier. You can move forward. So it's designed to help you with anything you're dealing with, to really come up with a strategy that will help you. A thing about it that's why my faith plays such a radical role in this book is that a lot of the things that has made me successful or allowed me to succeed in a lot of things is because I don't stray far from my faith. It's important to me. It's a foundation I stand on. And so because of that, if I'm going to write a book about self-help, or how to do something, I'm going to tell you that I found this victory through the Word of God that helped me to solve this problem. And this is the word I use. So the word becomes a tool now.
Yeah.
You use it the way I give it. It's written, and you can interpret it the way you need it to be interpreted. Because sometimes what happened, the Holy Spirit will give me a revelation of the same word and give you the same word with a different revelation.
Yep.
So I'm putting it down and let the word does what it does, and I'm going to do what I do.
Yep. I like that, empowering, like I said, I like that because, and why I'm a bit startled is because, when people are empowering, the first thing to think of is becoming rich. You're empowering me to become wealthy in terms of finance, but you could be wealthy in the spirit of the Lord. You could be wealthy in many other ways, because what's the definition of wealthy?
It's like somebody asked me the other day, what's the definition of success? And I tell them success is not having $1 million in the bank. You could have inherited it. That doesn't mean you're successful. Success for me is the person who decided when they were young that I want to become a teacher. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a radio host. I want to own my own business. And has pushed themselves through life to get the necessary education needed till the day show up when they have all their certification, they're in front of a class teaching it. That person is successful.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because remember now, a teacher might be the most underpaid position right now out there, but they're the most relevant for the future generation that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's because of an influence of a teacher who has inspired someone to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And he will tell you that the inspiration came, and sometimes he tell you from a third grade teacher who said, "You can, yes, you can,"
Yeah.
and it makes all the difference in the world. So when you realize that you have accomplished that goal, now success comes in. The money you're talking about comes in this way. If you are a mechanic and you've strived to be a mechanic all your life, and you love what you do, the love of what you do is going to make you perfect your craft so well that a customer will pay you whatever you're asking for to do the work they require you to do or solve the problem they need to be solved.
Yep. And
That's
that is so correct. Huh?
Exactly.
I couldn't say it any better.
Okay.
I'm perusing the book.
Yeah.
On page, let me see, 73, it says create change by raising your standards.
That came about years ago because we used to every year we do resolution at the beginning of the year. And for years I used to do that. And one year I just realized that I'm like everybody else. I start a resolution on January, and by March I forget about the resolution. Okay. I forget about the resolution. Like everybody, we started. It's like somebody said, "I'm going to start working out," and by March, everybody quit. So I'm like, "Why am I doing that? I'm following like everybody else." And I said, "Why don't I do it a different way?" I said, "Let me set a standard, and I'm going to strive to maintain that standard, and see how that standard will transform everything else around me." So I'm not trying to lose. I'm not trying to be exercising. My standard is that I'm gonna eat better. I'm gonna eat more healthier. Let's use that as an example. And eating healthier, all of a sudden I start losing weight. I start doing little things differently and start seeing the benefits of it. Now the standard is set. If I go out to dinner, I'm not gonna pig out on something I normally would have pigged out on because I've set a standard. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do this. And I'm going to live that. And I found it easier to maintain a standard than try to fulfill a resolution.
Well, I like some of the titles because they're intriguing. For instance, process is manifestation. The process is manifestation. These now, those are just true words. That process is manifestation. But this could be a whole story, and it could be information, given information, could be requiring information. And I gotta tell you that just going through the book as it is here now, without reading the details, just looking at the chapters and the headings, you realize this book is also inspiring.
Yeah, it is designed for that.
Yeah. It is empowering, but also inspiring because it inspires you to empower yourself.
Exactly.
Let's look at it that way. Right. And today, youngsters or people in general, we read a lot. We read the newspapers, we read magazines, we read all sorts of things. But things that inspire us, things that empower us, seem to be sometimes the things that get less. How would I say? Not less attention, but listen, they can print a magazine every week, a different one every week. An inspirational book like this or empowering book like this, they'll probably do this every 3 years. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I look at, and I always use my perception to look at things where I like when I find a nugget. A saying by someone that is so profound that it becomes transformative. And I'll give you there's two of them I want to give you. The first one I'm going to give you is there's an African saying that says, 1,000 sheep led by a lion can defeat 1,000 lions led by a sheep.
Repeat that.
All right. It's an old African saying.
Yeah.
It says 1,000 sheep led by a lion can defeat 1,000 lions led by a sheep.
Yeah.
I like saying that makes you think.
It makes you think.
Because now you're starting to look at a whole different dimensions of leadership now. and who you're following, who you're putting forward, or what are the things you are implementing to let you become the type of leader you want to be. That's one of the things I teach with young people, leadership.
Yeah.
I'm big on leadership. I'm big on entrepreneurship. Those two things I'm very much big on when it comes to young people. Because what happened, I'm looking at is like the internet is leading a lot of them. Social media is leading a lot of them. Guys who are on those platforms who shouldn't be role models are role models. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, when I had a chance a couple years ago to talk to some of the kids in some of your high school here, and I asked them, who are your role models? And most people they're giving me are rappers. And I said, okay, cool. Tell me why. Tell me the history of the person you're trying to emulate or you decide to be your role model. What about their history or their walk so far in their journey of life that makes you think that this person would be a good role model for you? And I tell you that 90% of them can't tell me, just like the hit song the guy did. I said, go back and do your research. Because you're going to find out some stories about this person that will surprise you.
Yep.
You find some things like some of them have actually gone to college. They're not dummies, they're smart. But some of them have taken the rough roads. They've gone through drugs and drug selling, and they might be the lucky one who never ended up in prison or got shot, and maybe have gotten shot and lived. That's not the role model you want. You don't want to get shit. You don't want to have developed an attitude at the same level how they become a tyrant to your parent and your community and your school. That don't make no sense. So the idea for me is to allow them to think.
About it, yeah.
Think about whatever you're looking at. Think about what you're saying, what you're putting, what you're locking in yourself into. Because if you look at it twice, you'll change your mind. I have a thing that always says, change mind, change life.
Mm-hmm.
The second verse that got my attention years ago, and I use this a lot, is an interview Nelson Mandela did a long time ago when he just came out of prison. And the interviewer was asking him,
a couple?
I think so, and he had asked him a question about envy and jealousy and unforgiveness and stuff like that. And his answer got me. He says, those things is like a man who drink the poison and hoping for the other man to die.
Yeah. So you drink the poison, you hope that.
Thank you. So get rid of hatred, get rid of unforgiveness. Even if the person doesn't deserve it, is not their benefit, is your benefit. Because they might have even forgotten what they did to stir you to that level. But if you forgive them, now you give yourself the opportunity to grow and to blossom and to bloom and not just have leaves on your tree, but start producing fruit.
Hey, yeah, that's really an interesting way of both sayings are very well, it makes you think.
And that's it in intent when I write books. I like things that make people think. I like when I write a quote and people stop and think, whoa, what? And read it twice because it hit them. There's a quote in the book. It was supposed to be on the front, but we removed it and put it inside. It says, the giant in you is bigger than the one standing in front of you.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
Okay.
It made me
And
think
that
too, yeah.
came out of an experience I had when I was sick and in the hospital, and realized that the only reason I'm going to get through this is because of the faith I have in me for the one who covers me.
Mhm.
That I have the faith that he's able to bring me through this. So if I can anchor my faith there, I won't worry about what the sickness is doing because God is faithful to his word that he will heal and deliver. So when I came out of that whole situation and I look back on it, even the very doctor, when I was on the surgery in the room ready to operate, and I told him that whatever I was going to operate on, what had actually happened, I got a lump in my throat. One of my adenoids under my tongue got infected, and it swelled up so big it cut off my swallowing and my breathing. And they put me in the hospital for 2 weeks. They gave me 8 ounces of antibiotics every day. So I got my antibiotics every day. It was in my veins. Veins were swelling up and all type of things were going on because they didn't know what it was and they didn't know how to deal with it. And through the whole process, the doctor kept telling me, Mr. Brown, you're so calm about this. I said, yeah, I'm all right. I said, I'm good. Because my philosophy was, I know whose hand my life is in.
Yep.
And because of that, if I die, I know where I'm going. But if I live, I know the purpose I have to fulfill. So I left it at that. And I had the Bible with me, so I read and I prayed and I relaxed. And I wasn't eating much, so I was doing okay. 10 days later, the things start going down. And about 10 or 12 days later, released me to go home. They said, you can go home. You'll be fine. You look like you're doing better. Come back in 2 weeks. We see. When I came back, 2 weeks later, I had a bump the size of a golf ball left under my throat, and it was hard. So the doctor says, tell you what, I'm going to set an operation for you just to cut it out because it seemed like it's not going any further. So 2 weeks later, operation is scheduled. I went home, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I said, Lord, you said, by your stripes, I am healed. I'm taking you literally on this one. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't use the doctor to do deliverance. The point is, whether it's the operation or not the operation, I'm still in your hand, regardless of what is going on. And so with that said, I said, my final comment was, I don't want the operation, but if it's your will, let your will be done. The morning I got up for the surgery, I wiped my hand under my neck, and the bump was totally gone. But I still had to go because the appointment was set. So I went. And I'm sitting there, and the lady gave me this 5-page document to the hospital to fill out. And she's looking at me, and she says, for a man operator, you seem calm. I said, I don't think I have anything to worry about. So I went in the operating room. They made me take off my clothes, have on my gown, lay in the bed. The anesthesiologist is putting her needle in my left hand. The other one is putting a needle in my right hand. They're hooking me up to the IV. And the lady says, Mr. Brown, why are you here? I said, I'm here for an operation for a bump, but I think I'm healed. And she looked at me with that funny side-eye look. Like, what? She said, the doctor will be in 2 minutes. You can tell him what you just told me. I said, fine. Doctor walked in, and he knows me. He said, Mr. Brown, how you doing today? I said, I'm fine, doc. He said, you're doing better? I said, yeah, but I think I'm healed. He himself looked at me. But what he did, he came and examined me. He spent about 10 minutes examining me. When he was done, he says, I am going to come into agreement with you that you are healed because I cannot find the lump that was there 2 weeks ago. So I am going to release you on the agreement that you are healed. And if it should come back, I will remove it for you for free. Never did up till this day. That was back in 2013. Wow. And so when you have testimonies like that, when you have walked what you yourself has experienced God and his miracles and his, and I have a lot of those in that book, the title now starts to make sense when it says a great fight is a product of great faith. The actual title came from the book of David. You remember the David and Goliath story. And I remember reading it over, and I start focusing on that dialogue David had with the king and his brothers about the battle he was about to fight with Goliath. And he's telling them that he has defeated lions and bears because of the help of God and what God has done for him. So this guy, no matter how big he looks, I am confident that I can beat him. To the point now when they try to put the king's armor on him, it was too big. The Bible went ahead and described it in details. He described the size of Goliath's sword and his shield. David declared what he not only is going to defeat him, but what the end result was going to be. That he's going to beat him and use his own sword and cut off his head. And so said, so done.
So done, yeah.
Now, when we are worried about the things we're going through, we need to sometimes remember what God has already brought us through. So the fight becomes a different type of fight now. Because your faith steps in and say, hey, I've tried and proven this guy before. I've tried and proven my God. He has brought me through some stuff. And because I'm confident of that victory I've had before, what's in front of me is nothing. I can win.
You see, and if you always worry about what's in front of us, we wouldn't ever move forward.
We won't.
You know, I remember something similar to that where there was this guy who had a problem with his throat. He couldn't even speak. His vocal cords were like completely gone. Right. He couldn't utter a word. And he went to a doctor. They took him to several doctors. Then he went abroad. And one doctor came, and he said the doctor didn't ask his name, not anything. But they had all the dossier, I guess. The doctor opened his mouth, he looked in, and the doctor said to him, now this guy was about maybe 17 or 18 years by then. The doctor said, I don't see anything in there that should stop you from speaking. He took a few steps back and he said, what's your name? And the first thing the guy tries to do now is to mimic his name. And the doctor, no. What is your name? And the guy spoke and said his name. The doctor said, nurse, dress him, get him out of here. You know, and the guy kept saying he doesn't know what caused him not to be able to speak. He couldn't speak for almost 3 weeks. You know? And a doctor just opens his mouth, look inside, and tell him, I don't see any problem. You can speak. And he spoke. You know, and he has been speaking ever since.
One of the most powerful tools we have is the mind.
Yes.
Um, and we have to be very careful of what we let in. I always said you must learn to guard your ear gate, your eye gate, and your mouth gate. The Bible says death and life is in the power of the tongue.
Yeah.
And there are some things that will come upon us that we already declared in before it even happens to us. And then when it happened, we act surprised. I'm like, but you spoke it into existence. You have to get to that place where you now guard your words.
Yeah.
You know, there's a part in the book I talk about the power of words. How words in today's society has drummed up so much fear that you I was in a store in the US the other day and I sneezed and I almost cleared the store.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And I said to myself, what happened to people that have allergies? You have had allergies all your life. You said this time you have allergy issues. They're gonna shun you and put you in a room, lock you away because you have allergies. We have gotten too spooky and too crazy, and listen. I've said this before. This is not the first pandemic we have, as a world, we have been through.
Nope.
The last one was over 500 million people infected. The statistics says anything between 17 and 100 million people died. They wear masks for 2 years. People are getting worked up about vaccine passport. I'm like, why? Because when they introduced it back then, it's the same response they got. Nobody wanted it. But they switched the name and call it a shot record. My kids have to get shot before they go back to school. I don't hear anybody protesting about that. You yourself have to get shots, and you can look at all of our arms and we got our Poland vaccine shot. Where's the protest on that? I'm not defending any position. That's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is don't get spooky in your head. That fear grips you and you don't want to even walk out your door.
God didn't make us to live in fear.
No. He said that's not a spirit he gave. So why are you going to take it up?
One other question I want to ask. You know, you're good. This book is good. Have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker?
I am.
You are.
I am. I do a lot. I've been around this type of thing for a very, very long time. I am a motivational speaker. I do a lot of mentoring, a lot of training programs, and as I said, I'm very much intrigued by young men. I want them to become the men that they are supposed to be for the future generation. I'm looking at this generation. I am very optimistic about our young people. They have the ability to do some amazing things that you and I really stumble to do from time to time, and I have to take a little bit extra effort to learn it. I just think that this lack a little leadership that needs to be fine-tuned and point in the right direction. That because they're going to deal with things that you and I have never dealt with in our journey of life. They're going to face some obstacles that you and I never face. And I'm not worried about the obstacles. I'm concerned about their mentality of how they look at it, because I see they're so tuned into social media. Some of them are committing suicide if they lose their popularity or people take them off or unsubscribe them. And I'm like, we have gotten so trivial that somebody stopped following you, or your following went down and you want to kill yourself. The cyberbullying. Bullying used to be face-to-face when you and I were growing up.
That was bullying.
That was bullying. Now it's not. A person you don't know from across the world says something to you, and all of a sudden, you're going crazy. And I'm like, why? I've had to actually talk about that in schools here in St. Martin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a little perturbed by it, because I'm trying to wrap my mind around the idea, and I know we're in a technology/social media era. But I think we need to sort of plant some different seeds in them, seeds that were planted in us way back when, as to not to take this serious. Your life is still in the square, the spaces around you. The reality is still in that square around you, not on the internet. Yeah.
And I think that because your book is very motivational it covers a lot of areas:
Yeah.
empowering, inspiring, and motivating.
Yes.
You know, so that's why I ask you, well, if you can write it, you can speak it.
Yeah. My background is very extensive, so I tend to start it there. Actually, my wife and I just finished writing another book. It's coming out in January called "It's Your Life Creation," and the idea came. I've had the idea for a long time, and and it came about because I get asked a lot to write business plans for people, and do a lot of that type of stuff, and so I always said nobody ever asked me to do a business plan for their life. And I said, I need to do one for my life. So I put something together and said, okay, let's look at all the points in your life that needs to be addressed, whether it's your health, whether it's your relationship with your wife or significant other, whether it's your finance, whether it's your relationship with your ministry. There's more. I came out with 15 points. And I said, now I'm going to address them one by one so I can organize it all so it flows together properly. And so we have a book out called "It's Your Life Creation Plan." We have this one is for adults and one is for children, young teenagers, and the one for adults came about one of the questions because a young lady was thinking about marriage, and I gave her a story that was given to me by a psychologist friend of mine. I remember when I had gone through a bad relationship, and he and I were sitting down having a drink and we are talking. And he says, describe the type of woman you'd want in your life. And I remember going down this 10-point checklist out of my head, how she should look, the whole 9 yards. She should be educated, and he's listening to me attentively. And at the end of the conversation, he said, let me ask you one question. I said, what is that? He says, why would a woman like that want to marry you?
Good question.
It is, because here's what it does. It made me step back and say, you know something, you're right, because I'm putting out perfection, but I'm far from being perfect.
Yeah.
So he gave me one advice. He says, become the type of man that woman will find you and marry you.
Yep.
And that changed my way of looking at it.
Well, Mr. Brown, we've come to the end of the program, but I'm going to ask you, the 13th of
November
is a distance away. Could I have you back before that?
Yes, sir. You just give me a date and time, and I'll be happy to come back and sing with you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I got to thank you for being here too.
You're welcome.
You could have been anywhere else, but I got to thank you for being here with me today.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, but we're going to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be happy to come back.
Yeah. That's good.